Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink. Performed by Jessica Nicole. Produced by Disparition. Part 2, Chapter 9. Pray. Thank you to Blue Apron for its support. Get 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/dead. And stay tuned after our show when I will tell you a knock-knock joke.
Kentucky in spring. White buds on the trees, yellow flowers in the fields. I haven't seen a sign of that woman since the farmhouse, but certainly I don't feel safe. I don't think I've ever felt safe in my life. Not all the way down. And now even my surface is turbulent water. Every shadow, every turn in the road. Somewhere around Horse Cave, I noticed a car. A puke green sedan, its passenger side door a slightly lighter puke green. It hung behind me for a couple of hours, and I tensed myself more and more into a panic, but then I looked and it was gone. These long-distance drives, it's not unusual to see fellow travelers for hours at a time, only to lose them at their exit. I'm reading too much into the usual rhythm of the road. I looked up Horse Cave, by the way. I mean, great name. In this cave there is a horse. You may ask the horse any question and it will answer truthfully. But choose wisely, as you may only ask once. There are no horses in Horse Cave. It's an actual cave, though, right in the middle of town. What is in the cave is a stream that used to provide the town's water, until they accidentally dumped a bunch of sewage in there. The smell was so bad that folks couldn't even walk on that side of the street, so... Good name, though. Caves are a bigger thing in Kentucky than I realized. There are advertisements for all sorts of activities you can do in caves. Ziplining, boating. If you can do it in the outside world, in Kentucky, you can do it in a cave. I saw the green sedan again, near Burnt Prairie, after the river between Kentucky and Illinois, marked by a railroad bridge with half of its length lost to the water. The sedan was driving erratically, switching from lane to lane, but always staying behind me. I lost track of it again an hour later. Just a fellow traveler, I told myself. There is no need for concern, I lied. All is well, I laughably asserted. Farmhouses with a perfectly tended square of lawn surrounded by massive acreage of crops. Is a farmhouse close to the highway considered worse than the farmhouses I could only see as dots in the distance? Where's the line between privacy and convenience? Guess it depends on how often you plan to leave home. It'd be nice to have a home to leave. The green car comes and goes, over hours, and then days. I keep seeing it, driving as though drunk or having recently met an irate wasp. Then I see it crashed, badly, into a tree. There's no one inside, no ambulance or police. I can't tell how long it's been there. Nothing seems right about this, but what can I do but keep moving? What could I ever do? The behavior of Bay and Creek in letting me live, and Thistle in trying to kill me, leaves me with one conclusion: that I have an important role in this war. And it must be one that only I can do, because, frankly, anyone would be better than me. I'm an anxious mess, and if they needed steady hands, mine aren't. Let's start with this. There is a war. To understand my role in the war, I need to understand the war itself, which I don't. I understand Thistle. They are monsters, plain and simple. They're hungry and they feed. Their ways are ways of wickedness. But why is the U.S. government hiding them? And Bay and Creek. Again, in one way, the motive is easily understood. There are literal monsters on these roads. Any good person, given that situation, would want to fight back. If evil, then good, somewhere, will stand against it. But Bay and Creek is powerful, and it is rich. Where are they getting the money and supplies to wage this war? Who is behind them? A battle of good versus evil, fine, but I want to know who the good is. Alice, did you know? Or did you proceed on faith because you knew the other side was so monstrous? Stopped at the Loves near Sioux City. In the bathroom, a stainless steel vending machine selling knockoff perfume. The idea was you put in your money, select your knockoff, and then the machine directly sprays you with it. Jesus. No, thank you. Paid for a shower. In the stall, there was a movement in the side of my vision. I kept turning to see it, in the steam in the tiny room, but it would be gone by the time I looked. As the steam grew, as my view of the walls faded, I became certain I was standing in the center of a vast space, and from the other side of this space, a woman in a police uniform was running at me. I kept flinching, waiting for the blow. An older man filled a travel mug of coffee the size of a keg. The cashier gave him a refill rate. Rests are required by law, but we are a profession that depends on artificial energy. We are paid by the mile, not by the hour. So every moment you don't move is a moment you are away from the place you call home and the people you love for free. You can feel it. The itch, letting you know that all of this time you are spending, filling the gas tank, taking that shower, that is all time you are not being compensated for. And so we drink coffee after coffee. It jitters through us as we curse a traffic jam for lowering our hourly rate enough to mean the difference between being able to pay a bill and not pay it. I saw a woman spill an entire cup of coffee down the front of a man's shirt. He glared at her, but she just laughed and shrugged. "Hey, we're truck drivers," she said. "We're always covered in the stuff anyway." After and outside, as I considered whether to burn up more time getting my filthy truck washed, I looked up. Far across the lot, a woman was walking toward me. She wasn't moving with urgency, but her casual loping walk was aimed directly toward me. I decided I didn't need anything else from this place, and I got in my truck and started the slow maneuvering to leave. The woman continued her steady walk toward me. As I pulled out of the lot, I saw in the mirror that she changed her trajectory to follow the turn of my truck. Hours later, on the road, I had the horrible feeling that she was still behind me somewhere, still slowly walking, never wavering in the direction of her steps. Alice, as long as I'm asking you questions, do you have any idea what it is they wanted me for? I hope not, because the thought that you knew that I would be involved and then hid that from me is the most painful thought of all. If it was something I could already do, then Bay and Creek would have tried to guide me to it, right? So it must be a matter of timing, or else I'm not ready yet to do it. Unless, by the very nature of what I must do, I cannot be guided. I must find it on my own. This is useless. I'm not going to be able to guess what my role in this is. And seeking out something when you don't know what it is indistinguishable from random wandering. So I'm left with only one option. I must wait. But I must wait mindfully. Search the moments for that moment that I'm, without knowing, waiting to recognize. I hope, for my sake, and for your sake, Alice, and for the sake of us all, that I'll recognize that moment when it comes. Iowa looks how you think Iowa would look. I don't mean this as an insult. In a life like mine, when something turns out to be as promised, that is already a major victory. There are fields and flats, a road, a sky. It is not a complicated landscape. But aren't I due some simplicity in my life? I stopped for breakfast at a small restaurant in a town that was mostly the restaurant. On the bulletin board in the waiting area, a flyer for a car repair place in a town called Fertile, Iowa, advertised that, quote, "We speak female." I take back the nice things I said about this state. An hour later on the highway, I noticed a fellow truck, blue as the sky, driving erratically. It sped past, and as it did, I looked over and had trouble processing what I saw. Covering the entire driver's side window was a series of cardboard signs, handwritten. All of them said, "I not bad boy." I couldn't see the driver because of the signs. It fell behind me again, but in the glare, I couldn't see through the windshield. It passed and fell behind a few more times, and then I lost track of it. I'm still so fascinated by the approach to sex stores in places that identify as conservative. Because they are really in your face with the sex stores. There's a huge one right by the highway with big signs advertising showgirls and a men's spa. How does that kind of open attitude translate with the proudly conservative culture of the rest of it? It's a strange dynamic. I passed a fireworks store called Sad Sam's Fireworks, and the sign was a huge neon face of a crying clown. I've seen some horrifying sights on my journey, but I don't think anything prepared me for that. That blue truck again. This time its entire windshield plastered with the same signs. Cardboard, tattered, "I not bad boy." What the fuck? Now it's on my tail, honking every few minutes. Alice, I am very, very worried. Ate lunch at the Cracker Barrel. They have a cheesecake that is 1,500 calories for a single serving. I had trouble wrapping my head around that. Oh shit! Oh shit! 2 days later, I've been off the radio. Didn't want to talk again until I was closer to where I needed to be. I went back into the Cracker Barrel to pee, and when I came out, that blue truck was there. Every inch of its windows plastered in those signs. I not bad boy. The doors were open, and standing on the hood of the cab was the woman in the ramshackle police uniform. Her chin was stained with blood, and when she saw me, she started howling. Not like an animal, like an alarm. She locked eyes, and with no change in her expression started a mechanical howling over and over. I ran for my cab. She didn't chase. I started the engine, started driving. She stayed on the cab, dripping blood onto the blue hood, howling. This wasn't in my plan. It wasn't anything I thought I would ever do. There is nowhere I can go in this country that she cannot follow. She can smell me, she said. And maybe she can. I've taken to filling my cab with heather, and the smell is making me a bit sick. But every little bit helps. I'd rather be less scared and more nauseous than the other way around. So here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to leave the country. I'm ditching the truck. I'm leaving behind the radio. It'll be a long time before you hear from me again. I won't say which border. I'm leaving everything behind. I'll leave behind my identity. I'll disappear into the cities where no one thinks twice about a stranger. My role in this war will become apparent with waiting, and it is better I wait somewhere anonymous and safe than continue to play dice with the universe looking to see me dead. You won't hear from me. Not for a long time. Alice, how did it get from there to here? What were the series of events? I have no particular plan for when I will return. Maybe it will be a few months from now, but more probably years. Alice, I believe in what you're doing. I don't understand it, but if when I am 70 years old, the call finally comes, I will return. I hope it won't be that long, but it could be even longer. I'll be a different person by the time I come back. So will you. We will be different. Older people. I hope those people like each other. Okay. Okay. Goodbye for a long, long... Oh!
Hey, Keisha. Why don't we go somewhere quiet, where we can talk?
This episode also featured the voice of Roberta Colindres. This episode brought to you by Blue Apron. Cooking for yourself is one of the most satisfying, enjoyable things you can do. It's like a magic trick you can eat, and Blue Apron makes it easy by sending you a box of fresh ingredients from their community of artisanal suppliers, family-run farms, fisheries, and ranchers. And with those ingredients and simple step-by-step recipes, you create delicious meals all for less than $10 each, like the Persian-style chicken and crispy rice. This had a bunch of ingredients I just wouldn't have thought of grabbing at the supermarket, like currants and pink lemon and summer squash, and I'm going to start using those things because it was all so delicious. Cook your own food, and then, more importantly, eat it. Just go to blueapron.com/dead to get your first 3 meals free with free shipping. That's blueapron.com/dead. Check out AliceIsn'tDead.com for new stuff, including thistle hats and Bay and Creek shirts, so you can show your allegiance. And please consider checking out our Patreon to help us take this show to the finish line. We feel so lucky to get to tell you this story. And now, a knock-knock joke. Knock-knock. Orange. 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 Orange.
This has been a production of Night Vale Presents. Find out more about us and our shows at nightvalepresents.com.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 398. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line is Luis Scott Vargas. Luis, how are you, sir? How goes?
I'm doing well. New draft format out is always exciting. Also, shameless plug, the game I work on, Eternal, also has set 2 coming out. So I've been drafting 2 different new sets at the same time. So,
oh, wow. So you actually got a lot going on at the same. So this is a big deal, right? For Eternal, this is literally the second set ever for the game.
Yeah, it's called Omens of the Past. The first set's the Empty Throne. And this is the digital card game that I work on during the days. And it is, it's awesome to see it come out. Seeing things you work on get released is pretty sweet, as you well know, since you work on this and then release it.
Yeah, that's really cool, though. I think that's, and I'm assuming, I don't know much about the games market like that, but I'm assuming that a lot of these games don't get to a second set. Is that accurate? Yeah,
I mean, it depends on how, exactly what the budget is, exactly what the game studio set up like, and exactly kind of the backing you have. But I'm very happy with how things are going, and the second set coming out is a good sign for Eternal for sure.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I've played a bit of Eternal myself. It's really fun. Did you know you can draft on it? That's you had me sold at that one when you told me you could draft. I was like, all right, I'm in. All right. So we've got our Hour of Devastation first impression show lined up for you today. I have had a chance to play the format actually quite a bit now, and our first impression shows have really experienced a strong level up since we've gotten the sets on Magic Online on Monday, because we just both dive in and are doing videos and doing drafts and doing sealed.
Our first impressions are now like our first 15 draft impressions, not our first 2 drafts plus maybe the pre-release impressions.
Right, exactly. Normally we would have done a couple of drafts. So that's great. We're going to get a chance to talk a lot about that, do multiple Crack-A-Packs today to get you kind of a feel for the format and how we're approaching it as well. This is where Crack-A-Pack really shines, is when the format's brand new, because, I mean, we understand you sit down to draft and it can be daunting. That's a lot of cards to look at. It's a lot of information to try to process. And then you're under this sort of clock of you need to make a decision. And so we think, doing the Crack-A-Packs will help you do that. So we got a couple of those lined up for you here. Before we get into all that, though, I want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. They are the place to go on the internet for everything you need Magic related. That's right, anything. If you need singles, you need that one special card for your Canadian Highlander deck, they're going to have it there at Channel Fireball. If you're trying to fill out a standard deck or even just buy one, you can get it at Channel Fireball. If you need to get sealed product, you want to get Hour of Devastation and do some drafts with your friends. I did a draft at a friend's house at Adams a couple of days ago. And my goodness, we had 16 people there. 16! Yeah, it felt like it was a local card store or something. It was insane.
So after you did the 16-person draft, did you play like Emperor?
That is not how we did that. No. And I like how you just assume that we just sat in this massive circle opening. I hope I wheel this. Oh, wait. So yeah, if you need a sealed product, if you want to have people over to your place to do a draft, you're going to need to get a box of cards or something like that. You can get it at Channel Fireball. And of course, you're going to get awesome free content. Some of the best Magic players and content producers on the internet for Magic make their stuff at channelfireball.com, and it's free. You can go there right on the front page and find articles and videos and podcasts like this one right there any old time you want. So channelfireball.com, please do visit them. Also, the show is brought to you by you, the Patreon, and via the Patreon, which is really, it's a game changer, right? It's what has made Limited Resources able to be what it is today, is the support of people like you, the listener, and we really, really want to say thank you, and we appreciate it. It's easy. You can give $1 a show, right? If you feel like you've gotten $1 a show versus value and you want to give back, you can do that via the Patreon. It's a nice way to be able to do this rather than random donations are kind of weird. They're cool, but it's that's a kind of odd transaction to make, and Patreon just gives you this nice, clean interface. You get access to stuff that other people don't. Nothing insane, right? You don't get the show a week early or something, but you do get to see pictures of Luis lying on a hotel bed.
Well,
nobody else gets that.
Not to chill for Patreon in general, because it actually doesn't apply as much to our show, since we do a show every week, rain or shine, whether there's a new format on Magic Online or not. Patreon, I think, is a great model because it gives incentive to content creators to regularly release content. So, I think that's incredible, especially for people who are on the fence or it's harder to make content. So, again, this doesn't apply to us. We are going to make a show every week. The amount of people on the Patreon doesn't change that one way or another. Though I think we're close to the goal of making 2 shows a week. But
Don't say that, man. You'd kill me.
but in general, I'm a big fan of Patreon and what it's done for kind of the ecosystem of content creators.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really awesome, and like you said, not just for us. So while you're there, you can browse around. A lot of Magic people, a lot of Magic content creators have followed onto Patreon as well. And I really think it's great to give back to the things that make you happy. I mean, this is kind of the new model that we have in the world these days. Before you'd have to work your way up through a radio station or become an on-air TV personality, and usually that meant going to school for a long time and then being some type of, underling for a while and then finally getting your shot in like a small market. And then if you're really good and the stars line up, you could make it to the big market. But those were all shows that were broad, right? They covered a wide range of topics, because if you turn on the radio, you can't have a show as specific as this one. Right? You can't talk about limited Magic on the radio because there's not enough big percentage of the population in any given area that wants to listen to that. So they'll cut the show. But we've proven that there is an audience worldwide for this type of content. In fact, there's a rather large audience. If you saw our numbers for our downloads, well, I was going to say during the set reviews specifically, they're insane. It's a big amount of people. And when you have, a group that big, before they were just not served at all. Just people that wanted to hear content about, limited or about Magic or improving at Magic. They just didn't have anything. And thanks to things like the Patreon, people like Luis and I are able to dedicate our time and our efforts into something like this to bring you the show you want. Anyway, I'll digress there. I could go on about this forever, but the Patreon, patreon.com/limited resources, if you want to check that out. Okay. One of the things that you do get as a perk of being a patron is you get to ask questions for the question of the week. We've got one here from Gareth who says, "Hey guys, I know this thread is a little old, but I wanted to throw it out there." In fact, by the way, that does remind me, Gareth is right. I'll be updating the question of the week thread on there to refresh it for people that are patrons, so you can throw another question up there. The last few sets have been quite aggressive, says Gareth, and I agree. I was wondering if you could give some advice on racing. I never feel more outplayed than when I lose a race I thought I was in a good position to win. It seems like my opponent was always one step ahead of me. Definitely had that feeling before as well, Gareth. Luis, when it comes to racing, can you give us like a snapshot of the type of things that you're considering when it's decided, okay, well, we're in a damage race now. And by the way, that's what Gareth is referring to, right? A damage race in a game where, it's both players trying to kill each other as fast as possible. That not all games of limited play out that way, but quite a few of them do. Do you have a sort of a bigger picture view on what you're looking for when you decide to race, and if you do, how you approach that?
Well, the first thing you have to make sure is you're actually winning the race. Like, if nothing changes, who wins this race? Because if you're losing and nothing's changing and you don't have much that will add to that, clearly you shouldn't be doing this, especially since your opponent likely will have something that will change the math.
So you're taking that to the before the, so you're saying if you do decide to enter a race, it's because you have the tools that you think will help you win that race, not because, your opponent picked a fight with you or whatever.
Right. You have a 4-4 flyer and they have a 4-4, but you're at 8 and they're at 20. That race is not going to be favorable unless you have a bunch of stuff to do. And if you don't, then you just can't even start that race, right?
Right.
The other rule of thumb, because every situation is different, but there are some rules of thumb I use. One is that your opponent on average is going to play like one board affecting card a turn. And most of the time that's true. They're going to play one blocker. They're going to remove one.
That's really good. That's very true. Yeah. One creature, one removal spell, something like that per turn.
So
okay.
When you make your calculations, it means that, let's say you have 2 creatures to attack them. And next turn you need one of them to get through. If they choose to race back, they're probably going to play one blocker or one removal spell, so that looks decent for you. Likewise, if you will die to all 3 of their creatures, you probably need to leave 3 or 4 creatures back, because the odds that they can remove one of your blockers tend to be pretty high. So just basically plus or minus 1 on each side. They can remove one of your blockers, or they can stop one of your attackers. This changes if they have 5 cards in hand and 8 lands in play. I'm assuming they're going to play 2 or 3 cards, but this is the it's turn 5. What are they going to do? Or, well, if they have 1 card in their hand, then they probably aren't playing 2 relevant cards next turn unless they draw something.
Right. And so you're adjusting that as you go for the conditions, but your baseline is about 1 thing per turn that gets to either put a blocker up, put another attacker up, or kill your guy. Okay.
Exactly. So one of the heuristics I will use when deciding to race is if I have spells in my hand that let me affect 2 things a turn, like I have, tap 2 creatures they don't untap, or I have a cheap bounce spell like an unsummon plus a blocker, or I have a cheap giant, like a trick, like a giant growth plus a blocker, or slash extra attacker, then I feel like I'm probably going to stay ahead of my opponent. I'm going to outpace them a little bit. And if I'm only playing one thing a turn, I assume they're also going to match that. And so if anything, I'm disadvantaged because they might actually play 2 things a turn. They're more likely to play 2 than 0, depending on how they're behaving. So those are just some like brief examples, but
that's good. That's really good stuff.
That's just where I start.
And I think that somehow the most important factor there is, do I enter a race or not? Because like, tell me, how do you think about this, Luis? Because whenever I decide, okay, I'm going to race, like, so me and my opponent are both just like not blocking. We're just going right past each other and we're just trying to get in as much damage as possible. I always have this feeling in the back of my head. And the question that I ask myself is, well, one of us is wrong, right? Like one of us can't wait, like, unless we have like exactly equal hands or something. I think, I should be putting myself to some criteria of saying, well, do I really think I have the tools to win this race? Because they clearly think they do if they're willing to get into a damage race with me.
I think that's where that trick comes in mind. I set it as 1 per turn, and if I feel like I can't beat 1 per turn, I feel like they probably have better information than me or a better position than me. So I'm less likely to want to engage in such a race. So it's the sort of thing where that's me trying to account for imperfect information, because it's clearly not right to be like, well, I'm winning this race if we don't do anything, and I've got 1 thing to play every turn. My opponent's clearly not going to add anything to their board. Like,
right. Of course. You wouldn't take the extreme stance of assuming that your opponent will do nothing.
But I also don't think that like every turn they're going to bounce 2 creatures.
Right.
I just through my years of experience and playing situations like this, I found that setting a baseline of 1 and adjusting based on like cards you've seen in your opponent's deck. If you've seen 2 unsummons, yeah, they're probably going to make 2 plays in one of these turns. If their deck looks kind of clunky, they're playing like a green ramp deck. When they're on 6 lands, maybe they can only play 1 card a turn. And I think that using that, you can kind of make up for the fact that you don't know what's in their hand. So there's a little bit of asymmetric information. But in general, yeah, one of the people is probably going to be wrong. But a lot of the times, both players have enough information about their own hand that they're like, well, I think I'm the one who's right.
That's interesting.
Where I get really suspicious is if my opponent starts a race that looks really bad for them, because then I feel like they have something insane.
Right, because then you're looking at a more extreme scenario where either they're very right or very wrong.
Right. I'm at 16. They attack me with a 4/4 flyer when I have a 4/4 and they're at 8. I'm like, well, they must have like a lot of removal in their hand, or like they must have a lot of chump blockers or something along those lines. And in that situation, it's pretty clear cut. I have to attack because I can't block. But imagine I'm tapped out and they attack me with a 4/4 ground creature, and I have a 4/4 ground creature.
Right,
and next
with
turn,
those
I'm
life
like,
totals.
Why did they start this race? So
yeah, why are they picking a
complicated
fight?
Question. This seems like something we could cover in an actual show as well.
Okay, yeah, we should do that. Good question, Gareth. Thank you for that. Okay, let's do some crack-a-packs here. Let's get into these Hour of Devastation packs. This first one comes from Evan. Thank you, Evan. By the way, I'm going to be putting these rares. I'm going to do a giveaway maybe next show or maybe the one after for the rares that I've already got. I haven't given them away in a while, and I've just got a stack of... Oh, yeah. I've just got a ton of stuff here that I'm going to be sending away to one lucky patron. And then I'm going to, from these packs, I'm going to start a new one as well. So we'll be doing that now. Okay, so first card out is called Kindled Fury. It's the red instant, gives a creature +1/+0 first strike until end of turn. It's a fine card.
This is a card you can play 2 of in the same turn to turn a race.
2 of?
Like you play two spells in the same turn. You're like Kindled
Fury.
Oh,
sure. Yeah.
It's just a fun card.
To do that. Yeah, it's fine. This card's been a little slow for me, but perhaps playable would be a good way to describe it. Avon Reedstalker. This is the 3 and a blue 2/3 flash flying bird warrior.
I actually literally have drafted blue once, and the Reedstalker didn't seem all that good when I played against it, so I'm not super high on the card.
Okay, I've drafted blue about 6 times, I think. And I have played some number of Reedstalkers, and they varied from okay to kind of not okay. So you can put one in your deck, but this is not a go-to common. Next is Act of Heroism. That's 1 and a white instant. You untap a creature, and it gets +2/+2 end of turn, and it can block an additional creature this turn.
replacement level trick, just like
it's just
all these cards have been replacement
yawn.
level.
Yep. Speaking of, here's Sidewinder Naga. This is the 2 and a green 3/2 Naga warrior, and if you have a desert or one in your yard, it gets +1/+0 and gets trample. So it ends up being a 4/2 with trample if you have a desert, someplace.
Again, not a card I'm that excited about, and I don't really stretch to try to find deserts to make this card good. Like, it's upside, but it's not like Wretched Camel.
Yeah, this is not the desert payoff that you're looking for. Yeah. Although it's fine. Kenra Eternal, solid little 2-drop here. This is the 1 and a black 2/2 zombie jackal warrior, and it's got Afflict 1.
I actually like this the most of all the cards I've seen so far.
I do too. Yeah, I think this is clearly our first pick right now.
I think 2-drops are still good, and zombies especially has impressed me. So.
Oh yeah, me too. Very good. Next card, Rampaging Hippo. You mad, bro?
I like this one.
Yeah, you mad.
This is
me too.
4 green for a 5/6 trample. It has cycling 2.
Yeah, this card's been good. It's impressed me. Like, look, I don't want to state it because I don't think it's like some amazing first pick or whatever, but this card's been really solid for me. The 6 toughness has been particularly good.
It looks like what Greater Sandworm's supposed to be and now is, which is a good top-end threat you can cycle if you need to. Just the format, as we'll get to, has got to the point where I actually like this kind of card a lot. I would still probably start with Kenra over this, but I wouldn't fault you for starting with the Hippo. Yeah, the Hippo has really been solid. Seer of the Last Tomorrow. This is the 2 and a blue 1/4, and you can pay a blue, tap it, and discard a card to mill a player for 3. I've not seen this card do anything.
Yeah, I've been really unimpressed. I have boarded it in a few times in my blue decks because it is a 1/4 blocker. There's a few threats that it's good against, but generally speaking, just avoid it. It's pretty bad. Speaking of that, Graven Abomination is the 3 mana 3/1, and it's an artifact creature, and when it attacks, you can exile a card from defending player's graveyard.
I'm not playing this card unless I really need it.
Yeah, the thing is, the effect is actually kind of nice. Like the exiling a card from a graveyard, like you can nab a desert that's pumping up their stuff. You can get an Aftermath card, an Eternalized card. Like there's actually some stuff that you would like to exile from a graveyard, but you get to attack once. And then they block it with their worst creature, and you trade your 3 mana creature for whatever the worst thing that they had was. Definitely not worth it. Another card that really has disappointed, I think, is Steadfast Sentinel. This is the 3 and a white 2/3 with Vigilance with Eternalized for 4 white. You know, we didn't love it in the set review, and it has really just been super mediocre for me. For a card that has like stats on it and abilities and stuff, it's really just not on my radar. It'll end up in a deck occasionally, but I have not been happy with Steadfast Sentinel in general.
No, same for me.
Like I'd rather play the Kenra Eternal, for example. All right, uncommons. Ooh, I love this one. Bloodwater Entity. This is the 1 blue-red flying prowess, and when it enters the battlefield, you can put an instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library. It's 2/2.
I have yet to play the card, but it does seem like it's pretty good. It seems like it's what blue-red wants. All
right, I don't want to spoiler alert, but I know what the best deck in the format is. I've been doing exhaustive research on this deck, and Bloodwater Entity is 100% my first pick right now.
Right.
I'm windmilling it over.
I would take it here too. It's not like any of these commons are impressing.
Yeah. No, I know you would. All right, here's Crypt of the Eternals. This is it's people I think haven't fully absorbed how slow this card is. So when it enters a battlefield, it's a land. When it enters a battlefield, you gain a life, and it taps for colorless. But you can make any of the Grixis colors, but you have to pay a mana to do it. So 1 mana, tap it, and then you can add blue, black, or red.
I haven't seen a good use for this. If you're literally Grixis and you're splashing something cheap, I guess it's fine, but I'm not a big fan. It's not even a desert.
No, it's not a desert. That's a big knock on it. And then the other thing is just that you have to pay the mana. So don't think that this is free. Like I had an opponent play this against me, and they're like, well, it's like free mana fixing. And I'm like, read it again. Like it's not free. Yeah.
It's literally not free.
Right. And so like, yes, it's tempting because you like get the little life gain, and it's like, why not? But there is reasons why not. There are reasons why not, I should say. Next one also hasn't really impressed me. This is Shafet Dunes. This is the white of the cycle that we actually previewed on the show. It's a desert. It taps for colorless. You can tap it and pay a life to add white mana, and you can pay 2 white, tap it, and sacrifice a desert to give all creatures +1. All creatures you control +1/+1 until end of turn at sorcery speed.
I think it's fine. I think if you want a desert, it's a good desert to have in your deck, and
I agree.
It has a relevant game impact. But I don't think
I just have yet to lose to it. Yeah, I just have yet to lose to it.
No, I wouldn't first pick this card.
Right. We've got a foil desert. This is Desert of the Indomitable. This is the green cycling desert. So it enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for green, and you can pay 1 and a green to cycle.
I really do like the cycling lands, but I'm not taking one over Bloodwater Entity.
Me neither. Now, here's a challenge for you, Luis. This is a hard one, too. This is Mirage Mirror. This is a 3-mana artifact at rare, and you can pay 2 mana to have it become a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn.
I think
I have no idea how good this card is. Is this good or what? Like,
I believe it's quite good.
Ben played it against us in the TDSL, and it looked good in his deck, but it's also quite slow. So
It is slow, but
can't get a vibe for it.
The format being a little slower means that you're going to have time to keep activating this, and it continuously updating as the best creature in play. Man, that's a powerful ability. So,
and worth the 2 mana that you have to spend.
I believe so. I would take it to start with, but I'd be open to the idea that Bloodwater Entity ends up being better.
Okay. Yeah, the thing that worries me about the mirror, because I love that. I love the fact that it scales with whatever's best. It's weird, right? Like it copies it until the end of turn. So like if you're attacking, you can copy it and then attack. But if you want to block, you have to just leave the mana up. Your opponent's going to know exactly what, you can have. And it's a little clunky at 2 mana, but it does seem powerful.
Yeah, it's not particularly good on defense, but I think it's powerful. I would want to play with it more. It's on my list of like cards I'm unsure about, but at this point I would say it's better. It's more likely to be good than not.
I agree. Okay. That being said, I am taking Bloodwater Entity out of this pack, and I'm doing it almost as a political statement because I'm loving this deck, man. We'll talk about it when we get done with the Crack-a-Packs, but yeah, this is the exact card I want to open. Like, as close as I get to forcing a deck, which is not something I really like to do. This is it. Bloodwater Entity. That is my guy. Okay, let's do another Crack-a-Pack. This one comes from Tyler from Seattle. Thank you, Tyler. I actually met Tyler at a local game store. I went and drafted F&M. It was pretty fun. Phoenix Games, if
Did
you're
you get
in
a sweet
Seattle.
promo?
Actually, I did get a promo. I don't remember what it was. It was some blue card. That's funny. They put it with my packs, all the packs that I won, the pile of packs that I won drafting.
Sick frags.
All right. Are you ready for this first card?
Oh,
It is Solitary Camel.
So this is 2 and a white for a 3/2 camel, and if you have a desert and player in your graveyard, it has lifelink.
You know that song, like, I think it's called All By Myself?
Yeah.
I always just sing that song to myself whenever I
feel
see
like you shouldn't be allowed to have 2 of these in play.
Can you have this and a Wretched Camel, or does that also violate?
I think that's fine. The Wretched Camel is clearly no longer a camel.
But 2 solitary camels. Yeah, that's absurd.
I think Solitary Camel's fine. It's, again, replacement level. Like, if you have 2 deserts in your deck, it's a fine card, and I'll usually play it. It works especially well with pump spells, but can't really imagine first picking it.
Yeah, same. Yeah, replacement level indeed. Speaking of, Disposal Mummy. This is 2 and a white for a 2/3 zombie jackal, and when it enters the battlefield, you can exile a card from an opponent's graveyard. I played this when I'm in zombies. Yeah, and then otherwise
I don't really play it outside of zombies.
Yeah, I agree. And it's similar to the camel. Oh, here we go. All right, we've set the bar very high. We've opened an open fire.
All right, 2 and a red, instant, deal 3 damage to target creature or player.
Right.
I think it's the second best common, so I'm happy first picking.
Second best common.
Yeah.
I have it at number 1 right now. Oh, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Ambuscade over.
Oh, you like Ambuscade better? Okay, yeah. Ambuscade's really, really good too. Yeah, they're very close. I don't know which one's better. That's a great question. Ambuscade is fantastic too. Maybe Open Fire's better. I don't know. Next is Beneath the Sands. This is 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic. Put it on basic land. Put it on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Or you can also cycle it for 2 mana. A lot of mana fixing and ramp in this set.
I think it's actually playable. It's in a 3-color ramp deck.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's not fantastic, but it's playable.
I mean, what you're really saying is that a 3-color ramp deck might be playable.
Yes, it's more than playable. I think those are actually good.
Me too. Yeah. And that it's been a little while since we've been able to say that, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Grizzly Survivor. This card's been real bad. It's 2 and a black for a 2/3 Minotaur Warrior. And whenever you cycle or discard a card, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
Yeah, I've been very unimpressed with this card.
Same. Traveler's Amulet?
1 mana artifact. You can pay it 1 and sack it to go search for a basic land, put it in your hand. I play it if I'm in 3 colors. I do not play it if I'm in 2 colors, essentially.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Unless I have really restricted mana cost, but it hasn't come up yet. So
if you are in 3 colors, do you replace this? Like, does the first amulet just sub in for a land?
Yeah, because if you have 1 land plus an amulet, that is just a 2-land hand. It's a little, you have to spend a turn doing it, but it does count as like 16 land on an amulet is effectively 17.
Right. I do the same. Survivor's Encampment. I've actually played a lot more of these than I thought I would. This is the... Yeah, go ahead.
Desert that taps for a colorless, or you can tap it and tap a untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
Yeah, better than I thought. I just need deserts more often than I thought.
It's a desert is why this card is
exactly. Good. It's a desert that can make colored mana, which
can
is
very relevantly make colored mana. If you have
yes.
an 8 swamp or 9 swamp deck with 6 plains in one of these, but you have a lot of black 2-drops, this is going to add white mana a lot of the times you need it to.
Yeah, I like it. Gift of Strength is next. This is the 1 and a green instant. Creature gets +3/+3 and reach until end of turn.
Playable, certainly not exciting.
Yeah, it's the same as what you said, replacement level. Crash Through is next. The classic 25th card or whatever. Red, sorcery. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn, and you draw a card.
I haven't played this card yet. I don't anticipate playing it very often.
No, I played it in one deck, and it was it just doesn't fit. Right? Like, it's just, you would always rather have an action spell in that spot. And it's only if you're short on playables that you'd run a Crash Through. And then you're fine. All right, this card's pretty good. None of these are even close to open fire, but Oketra's Avenger has been impressive. It's 1 and a white for a 3/1 human warrior. And when it attacks, you can exert it. If you do, this is a little tricky. It prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to it. I think a lot of people just read that as indestructible. Which isn't the case.
Not. You can still open fire it during combat and whatnot.
Yeah, which does come up a little bit, but for the most part, it just means, you just can't mess with it in combat. Yeah, really aggressive. It's really kind of the premier 2-drop that I've seen for the aggressive decks. Yeah,
aggressive decks need this card. So after open fire, this looks like my pick, but I would still take open fire.
Me too. All right, let's get into these uncommons. Ooh, I like this first one. Merciless Eternal. This is 2 and a black for a 2/2 zombie cleric with Afflict 2, and you can pay 2 and a black and discard a card to give it +2/+2 until end of turn.
Definitely a good card. I think it's actually third in line. I would take Open Fire and Oketra's Avenger over it, though I can see an argument for taking it over Avenger.
Yeah, I think at this point my order would be Open Fire, Eternal, and then Avenger, though, very close. But it's a good card, but again, not as good as Open Fire. This next card, I want to like you so much, Dune Diviner. You're 2 and a green for a 2/3 Naga Cleric, and you can pay a mana, tap an untapped desert you control to gain a life.
I think it needed to just tap the desert, not have to pay a mana.
Not the mana.
As is, it's costing you 2 mana a time, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth the hassle of putting deserts in your deck. Like 3 mana 2/3 that said 2 colorless gain a life would be very good, I think.
I think so too. Also,
It's just not that.
Yeah, like when I rated this originally, I remember rating it higher, and I think I'm just shell shocked from having played Triple Amonkhet for 3 months or whatever, where a way to get back some life could actually be useful, especially on a creature that can block and attack itself. But here it feels like that's a little bit less. It still exists. I still like the idea of this incidental life gain, but the body as a 2/3 for 3 is just a little under expectation. So I think the card's still playable, but yeah, it's not good, right? You don't look at that card and go, oh, that's a good card. You want that card. It's you can put it in your green deck. Okay, well, this got a little weird. Shafet Dunes.
All right.
Okay, so we know that. And guess what our rare is?
It's another Mirage Mirror?
Yeah, it's another Mirage.
Well, I'm going to take Open Fire over Mirage Mirror.
I am too, for sure.
So...
You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to take another pack. This one's just going to come from my drawer because I'm not we got the same rare twice. What the? No, we're not doing this. We're doing another Crack-a-Pack, Luis.
All right.
Get out of here. If I open another Mirage Mirror, I'm flipping this table, and it has 2 computers on it, so it'll be pretty epic. This pack comes from Marshall from Seattle. All right. Thank you, Marshall. All right. First card out. Kenris Scrapper. Been very impressed by this card.
Oh, yeah.
2 and a red for a 2/3 Jackal Warrior with Menace, and you can exert it to give it +2/+0. The cool thing about it is that it always has menace, right? Like a lot of the exert creatures, we're used to saying it gets a little bigger and some bonus. This one, they split it apart. So it always has menace. And then if you want to pump it, you can get in for the extra 2 damage as well.
I think I drove people crazy in my first video. I kept wondering why they weren't exerting to give it menace, and that's just not how the card works.
Sure.
But yes,
yeah.
it is very powerful. I think this card is a card I'm not unhappy to first pick.
No, I think it's just good. Yeah. And here's one thing that I was thinking about. I was playing this card the other day. So for most of the exert creatures that we were used to, if you chose to exert it, you were often doing less damage in the aggregate than if you could attack normally, right?
Yeah,
like I'll use Gust Walker.
The same amount.
Yeah, but this does the same amount on average, which is kind of interesting. Although over the short term, that's not necessarily true, right?
You could do 2 then 4 and do 6 over 2 turns rather than than 4-0 or 2-2. But in general, this does not give up damage to get the bonus.
So what would make your decision? What would change your decision about? Like I've been just attacking without exert if I can get the creature through, thinking that the one turn when it matters more, I'll be able to do it. But like, is there any like? Does it even matter? I mean, and like,
matters. It's that's generally correct. But if you think that it's not going to be able to get through next turn, sometimes you rather just get the 4 in guaranteed.
Right. Yeah.
And
of course, and if you're going to block, if you need to block at some point, that's
right.
of course.
But yeah, in general, I think that the baseline for this is just attack with it, and then only exert if you need it to, like, if they have a 4/4 they can block with alongside some other creature.
Yeah, I think this is a very highly rated common, really good card. Next is Dutiful Servants. This is the evolution of, what are they called?
Those Who Serve.
Those Who Serve.
This is 3 and a white for a 2/5 zombie instead of 2 and a white for a 2/4. I don't like paying an extra mana for +0/+1. So this is mediocre unless you're dedicated zombies, at which point it's like slightly above mediocre.
Ooh, here's a good one. Here's a good question too. Kenra Scrapper or Puncturing Blow. This is the 2 red sorcery, and it does 5 damage to a creature. And if that creature dies this turn, you exile it.
I would take Puncturing Blow right now, but I can see changing that.
I would too, but Scrapper is in the conversation in my mind. Proven Combatant is next. This is the 1 mana, the blue 1/1, and it has internalized for 4 blue. Been pretty meh.
Yeah, I think it's playable, but I don't think it's great.
I agree. Yeah, I think I like if you have it in your deck, it's not like an embarrassing card, but I haven't really felt myself being like, oh, how many Proven Combatants can I get? All right, this next card's solid too. This is a good pack. Harrier Naga.
This is a 2 and a green for a 3/3, and no text, but a fine card. I think that it's worse than Kenra Scrapper and not something, or Puncturing Blow, and I'm not something I'm really looking to first pick. I found that my green decks don't actually want this card that as often as I thought it would.
Really? I've been jamming it in all the green decks. I'll play as many as I can get. I
think it's playable, but if I'm drafting a green ramp deck, I'm not going out of my way for these compared to the ramp cards.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. Lurching Rot Beast. This one's going to lurch right out of the frame here. It's 3 and a black for a 4/2 zombie beast with cycling black.
I actually think this card is better than it looks. Not that it looks good or is great, but it is better than it looks because it is a zombie, and a 1 mana cycler plus a 4-power creature is actually decent. So
I don't know. I still think it's just a trap. Like all those things are true, and when I play it, I'm just like, this card's terrible.
I've not had that experience. I've played it and had it been fine.
Okay.
I haven't played it outside of a zombie deck, though. Like, you want it to be triggering your zombie abilities and go with unconventional tactics. I wouldn't just put it in a black-green deck and be like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. We disagree on that one. Granitic Titan. You're talking about payoffs for the ramp deck. Yeah, what does this one do, and do you
4
like
red for a 5/4 menace with cycling 2.
Okay.
And it's a fine card. It's not as good as the Hippo. I'd rather just have the extra toughness, but it's playable.
Yeah, I think this is a lot worse than the Hippo.
Yeah, I'm not excited about this card.
Right. It's super filler. Yeah. Next is Desert of the Indomitable. That's the green cycling desert we talked about a little bit ago. Fine card, but again, these 3 cards I have, the Harrier Naga, the Puncturing Blow, and the Kenra Scrapper are the much better ones. Seer of the Last Tomorrow. This is that mill 1/4 guy. Again, we don't like him. Graven Abomination. That's the 3/1 that we don't like either. And that brings us to our uncommons. And we got some nice ones. Here's Quarry Beetle. You called it Primeval Titan.
Yeah, this is the uncommon Primeval Titan. It's 4 and a green for 4/5. And when it enters the battlefield, you can play a land from your graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Or put a land into play from your graveyard. I've thought this card is fine. I haven't really gone out of my way for it.
No, I think it's good. Yeah, it's like a solid card. It does kind of exactly what you'd expect. If you need a 5-drop, this one will be just fine. You can make sure you cycle a desert ahead of it if you are planning on doing that. Just try to get some value, though. But it's not as good as the red card specifically, and I think maybe the Harrier Naga might just be better than it as well. Oh, good. Oh, goody. We opened a card I really wanted to talk about anyway, so we'll just do it here. Torment of Scarabs.
Yeah, so we gave this card an F in our set review.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's better than that, but I also still don't think it's great.
Okay, so this is the 3 and a black enchantment or a curse. You enchant a player, your opponent specifically, and at the beginning of that player's upkeep, they face this decision, and there's 3 cards in the set that make you make this decision. You can either lose 3 life, discard a card, or sacrifice a non-land permanent.
Basically,
go ahead. What's your take on it?
It's a hasted 3-power creature that can't get killed by removal and can't be blocked, but they can choose to discard a card or sacrifice a non-land permanent in order to prevent the damage.
And it can't block.
And it can't block is the crucial part. So
right.
Basically, this card is going to look pretty good in games where you're doing well. It's going to be very, very bad in games where you're behind or you're getting attacked. And you can't count on it to force through the last bits of damage. In like a tight race, your opponent can just start throwing away cards, whether in play or in their hand to prevent this. But if you go 2-drop, 3-drop, and you play this, like it does add up.
It really does, and this is one of those type of cards that can put your opponent in a position where they cannot win. And it feels very powerful when you do that. Where like if their board state has been whittled down and they're at like 6 and they're top decking, they don't have any cards in hand, they just can't do anything, right? Like they play a creature, they have to sack it. If they don't play a creature, they can discard the card, but you get to just kill them with your creatures.
Yeah, the problem I have with it is the games where you play this and they're at 18 and they just like pay 3 life, pay 3 life, but you skipped your turn 4. Or you just
totally
skip, your turn 6 or whatever the turn it is you play it. So,
and I've seen both of these, by the way. I've been on the bad end of Torment of Scarabs where my opponent played it, I started paying life, but then like they had a powerful spell to back it up, a Grind to Dust, and to kill my 2 best threats. I'm like, okay, I've already paid 6 life into this thing. I'm going to pay another 6 life because it was a scenario like you described. I was at 18 or whatever. And then they had like a good blocker and another removal spell. Now that's a lot to ask, but in that case, the Torment of Scarabs did actually end up winning them the game. By that same token, I've also had a turn where I played a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop, and my opponent played like a 2-drop and then missed their turn and then played Torment of Scarabs. And I destroyed them. Like it did stone nothing. Like it was just completely like it was the big, like once they played that card, I knew I was winning. Like they're just like Torment of Scarabs. Like, oh, thank God I win. It's just like, it was such a blank.
Your opponent just skipped their turn 4.
Yeah. A big turn, a really important turn in Limited is turn 4. That's a lot of mana and a chance to, put out a big blocker, destroy a creature, put out another attacker, whatever it is. So very, the way Ryan used to describe these cards are strikeout home run type cards, where they can be the best card in your deck or do the most important thing in the game, but they also can do nothing. Right. And part of our philosophy on limited resources, especially because we are talking to a general audience of players of a lot of different skill levels who are looking to improve. One of the best ways you can improve at limited, if you're still learning, is to play cards in your deck that actually do something to the board. We call that cabs theory or a cabs type deck, a card that affect the board state. And, Torment of Scarabs is a classic it does not fit into that paradigm. Now, the truth is that this card, Torment of Scarabs, does affect the game in a positive way in certain decks and in certain scenarios that other cards wouldn't be able to. And that does give it some level of power and it makes it worth looking at. So that's kind of where you start to transition away from, okay, I'm a newer player. I play a lot of cards in my deck that don't do anything and I need to stop doing that. But then you don't want to I've never been an advocate for only playing cards that affect the board state. That's not the best way to win. That's not the absolute best way to win at limited. That's just, I'm trying to clean up the 15 or 20% that people give away by playing way too many cards like this in their deck. The other thing I want to mention about cards like Torment of Scarabs is that the further behind you are, the more they punish you. An example of that would be something like, let's say you mulligan to 5. right? That happens, right? Sometimes you just look, you have a one lander, you mulligan it, and you look at your 6 and there's no lands. Okay, I'll go to 5. And those games are very demanding on your deck because you're usually going to be under a lot of pressure and things are going to have to go very right for you to win the game. And when you put cards like Torment of Scarabs in your deck, that these get amplified. The bad half of a Torment of Scarabs gets amplified huge when you're way behind or when you've mulliganed a lot, because now if you draw this card, you just can't win. I mean, you can't mulligan, you can't have effectively mulligan to 4, which is what this is in many of those scenarios. And expect to win the game. So you have to try to take a holistic view where you remember all of those things and not just the time when you played Torment of Scarabs and it won you the game in a spot where most cards wouldn't have.
Yeah, I think that this is going to end up being a card that will send a lot of false positives.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
When it's good, it's going to be really good. And you have to look at both sides, though, because there definitely is room for this card to be a playable card without it being either of those two things. So the way I like to look at it is to build around it. Yeah.
To try to make this, a card that most of my cards affect the board or do something more meaningful. And I like to just be very picky about the cards that don't. Card draw spells often make the cut, that type of thing. And this can be that card. It's just you need to build around it. The other question I have for you, Luis, is so you were describing it as kind of like this haste creature. Like that made me think of like an aggressive stance. Do you think that there's merit to playing this in a control deck?
No, absolutely not.
You wouldn't build around it like that?
I don't think so. I mean, you could try it, but my guess is
the idea
not
being
be as good as just. Okay. I want my finisher to be a rampaging hippo that can also block.
I see. Right. Because the blocking aspect is so big. Because, I mean, the idea being, look, if you have a bunch of good blockers and good removal and you play this, the longer the game goes, the better it is for you. Like, sure, for the first 5 turns, they can just do stuff that doesn't matter. But for the next turns, it starts to really catch up to you, right? Like you've discarded cards, your life total starts getting low, and, the vice sort of tightens on the game. But you really do need to be able to sit there behind this thing for turn after turn after turn after turn. Like it's going to take a while to actually get the job done. But you're off it, huh? You wouldn't do that?
I think that's the problem with the card.
Okay. Next one is Inferno Jet. This card's been pretty impressive too. It's 5 and a red for a sorcery. It does 6 damage to an opponent, and you can cycle it for 2 mana.
I have liked this card. I will generally play it definitely in all my aggro decks. Also, I think it's actually fine in mid range too.
I do too. I just think it's a really good card.
Them for 6, and all of a sudden
so much. It's so much. Like it's so weird when you get to that early to middle part of the game and you have an Inferno Jet in your hand because you're just playing a different game than your opponent is. Right? You're like, I got to get you to 14. Your opponent's like, I got to get you from 20 to 0. It just, I don't know. It just spots you that much damage. And then, I've complained about this enough, so I won't go into it. But, these conditional cards that normally make a tough decision about whether you should put them in your deck and what type of deck they go in. Well, Inferno Jet just lets you off the hook by giving it cycling too. So in the scenarios where you're behind or it's not going to work, you could cycle it away. I like it. I think it's really good. I hate that I like it, but I really like it. I think it's really good. All right. Our rare is Resilient Kenra. This is 1 and a green for a 2/2. And when it enters the battlefield, you can have target creature get +X until end of turn where X is its power. And you can eternalize it for 4 green.
I am a pretty big fan of this card. I just think it's a solid card in basically any deck, even a control deck, just because it's just intrinsically powerful. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy enough starting with this.
I'm trying to decide what I would take out of this pack. It's tempting just to take the rare because the Resilient Kenra, like you said, is flexible, powerful. It's very good. It's certainly better than Harrier Naga.
I will be honest. You talked so long about Torn of Scarabs. I have no idea what else is in the pack, but I would take Resilient Kenra.
Dude, I wanted to talk about it. We're here to talk about Magic cards, right?
No, I think it's fine. I think
you can tease me about it, but I've been waiting all week to talk to you about this card.
I think that discussion was good, and I think that card is probably very different than what our current evaluation is. Like one way or another, we're probably wrong about it. But right. I honestly don't remember what other cards were in the pack now.
Yeah, and the truth is we're so good at this that we're wrong so not often. All right, fine. Maybe I'm not quite accurate on that. But no, but the Torment is a card that really is difficult to gauge. And I think we were off on it. That's why I wanted to talk about it. So the other cards were Puncturing Blow, Kenra Scrapper, and then I've got Inferno Jet, and there's the Harrier Naga as well. So basically, it's probably Puncturing Blow or Resilient Kenra.
I would take Resilient Kenra over Puncturing Blow, at least at this point. Maybe I'll change my mind after I play with it a few more times, but it looks pretty good to me.
I think I would too. It's really close, though. I might just take the Puncturing Blow. I'd probably take the Kenra. I'm a real sucker for the early game, late game cards like that. Okay. Oh, we got those Cracker Packs done. What do you think of the format? What has been your biggest impression?
The one sentence, what is the difference between the last format, because we have 1/3 old cards, is the format's slower. You're not dying on turn 5 as often. You're not behind if you don't have a 1-drop. Sometimes you're not even behind if you don't have a 2-drop. And that opens up the possibilities for more different decks to kind of emerge and more different strategies. So,
can we just say hooray?
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's not... Look, I think we get a little bit of a bad rap for being against aggro. Like, I actually do enjoy playing aggro, and I played tons of aggro decks, in general. But I do think that a format like Triple Emonket, where you had, cartouches and good 1-drops and great 2-drops that you couldn't block, like, it was just low on interaction. Regardless of what kind of speed you like, it was a low interaction format. And this format's just different than that. It is high interaction. So, I think my favorite deck right now is Green Ramp.
Okay.
Just because you get a wide range of cards you can play and you can finish with, and there's a decent amount of fixing so that you can play 3 colors. So I've been happy with cards like Rampaging Hippo and Greater Sandworm at the top end, and especially impressed with Oasis Ritualist, the 3 and a green 2/4 that taps for any color, or you can exert and tap it for 2 of any color.
You've been liking that guy, huh?
It gets you to 6 or 7. Cards like Sifter Worm are just great.
Oh my God, Sifter Worm is so good.
Yeah, it's no Polak Worm, but it's pretty close. And
God, is it better?
I think Polak Worm's still better. Polak Worm gives you an additional card and gains you always 7. Like, those are both pretty.
Oh yeah, so on auveraage you're not nearly gaining 7 from the Sifter. Okay, that's fair. Did Polak Worm
unless
have
you're
trample?
Sifting into Sifter, which is of course the
Did Polak Worm have trample?
It did.
Okay, yeah, that's nasty.
But either way, you can play 6s and 7s. You can you have good ramp to get you there and the time to do that. And I have enjoyed playing that deck, and I think the deck is good. I think that it is legit good. You can splash with Manalith or Traveler's Amulet if you want. Oasis Ritualist also helps with that. And I think that, like, Gift of Paradise from Imonket is just like a great card now. So overall, that's been the deck I've liked the most, but there's a lot of different stuff going on. I know what deck you like the most. Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay, so my favorite deck, and I think like it's my front runner right now for best deck in the format, though of course that could change, is Blue-Red. So we both liked Blue-Red a lot in Amonkhet, but recognized that it was hard for it to make it come together because it ended up being so focused on those key kind of like uncommon payoff cards, the